The Ashes and the Crown. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a young girl named Cinderella. Her name had not always been so, for she was born Ella, the cherished daughter of a kind father and a gentle mother. But life, as it so often does, turned cruel. When Ella was but 10 years old, her mother fell ill with a sickness that no potion or healer could cure. On her deathbed, she clasped Ella's tiny hands and whispered, "Be kind and brave, my dear, even when the world is not." Those words became a mantra that carried Ella through the storm to come. Not long after her mother's death, Ella's father remarried. His new wife, Lady Tremaine, was elegant and beautiful, with 2 daughters of her own, Anastasia and Drizella. At first, Ella tried to welcome them into her heart, remembering her mother's words. But Lady Tremaine's sweetness dissolved once her father was away on his merchant journeys, and her stepsister's jealousy flared like embers in dry grass. The household changed forever the day a letter arrived bearing a royal seal. Ella's father, it read, had perished at sea. She clutched the letter tightly, her heart breaking anew, but Lady Tremaine merely folded her hands with a grim smile. "It seems," she said, "you will be of more use to this family in a more practical role." From that day forward, Ella became a servant in her own home. The years passed, and the once vibrant Ella faded. Her fine clothes were taken and replaced with rags. Her bed was moved to the drafty attic. Her stepsisters nicknamed her Cinderella, mocking the soot and ash that clung to her skin after cleaning the great hearths. Yet Ella clung to her mother's words. She endured with a quiet grace, whispering her mantra like a spell. Be kind, be brave. One crisp morning, a proclamation arrived in the village square. The king had decreed a grand ball to celebrate the prince's return from his travels. Every eligible maiden in the land was invited, for the prince was seeking a bride. Lady Tremaine, of course, saw this as an opportunity. "Anastasia, Drizella," she cooed, "we must make you dazzling for the ball. One of you will surely win the prince's favor." Cinderella's heart leapt at the thought of the ball. Though her life was hard, she dreamed of escaping the confines of her attic and seeing the splendor of the palace. "May I go too?" she asked hesitantly, her hands trembling. Lady Tremaine's laugh was sharp. "You? In these rags?" she sneered. "You're welcome to attend if you finish all your chores and find something suitable to wear." The command was impossible, of course. Lady Tremaine piled task upon task, ensuring that by the time Cinderella finished, she would have neither the strength nor the time to prepare. The night of the ball arrived, and as her stepsisters preened in their gowns, Cinderella found herself in the garden, weeping softly under the moonlight. It was then that a curious thing happened. A warm breeze rustled through the trees, carrying a faint, chiming sound. Cinderella wiped her eyes and looked up. Before her stood a woman clad in shimmering robes that seemed to be woven from the night sky itself. "Who are you?" Cinderella asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled kindly. "I am your fairy godmother, dear, and I believe you have a ball to attend." Cinderella blinked in disbelief. "But I have nothing to wear and no way to get there." "Nonsense," the fairy godmother said, waving her wand. "We'll fix that." With a flick of her wrist, the garden transformed. A nearby pumpkin swelled into a gleaming carriage. Mice scurried forward and grew into sleek horses, and her tattered dress turned into a gown of dazzling silver and blue, adorned with sparkling glass slippers. Cinderella twirled in awe, but the fairy godmother held up a hand. "Remember, my magic is not infinite. You must return before the clock strikes midnight, or everything will return to its original form." Cinderella nodded earnestly, her heart racing with excitement. "Thank you," she said, climbing into the carriage. As the carriage rolled toward the palace, Cinderella could hardly believe her good fortune. She felt like a princess, and for the first time in years, hope bloomed in her heart. The palace was even more magnificent than she had imagined. Its grand halls glittered with gold and crystal, and the air buzzed with music and laughter. Cinderella entered hesitantly, her beauty turning heads as she descended the staircase. The prince, who had been mingling with the crowd out of duty rather than interest, looked up and froze. He made his way to her, his expression one of quiet determination. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice warm. Cinderella's heart fluttered. "Yes," she said, taking his hand. They danced as though the rest of the world had faded away. The prince asked her questions, intrigued by her intelligence and humor, and Cinderella found herself laughing and speaking freely, forgetting her hardships. But as the evening wore on, the clock in the great hall began its climb toward midnight. Cinderella's joy turned to panic as the first chime echoed through the palace. "I must go," she said, pulling away. "Wait," the prince called, but she was already running, her glass slipper slipping from her foot on the marble staircase. She didn't dare stop, reaching her carriage just in time for the last stroke of midnight. As she returned to her attic, her gown transformed back into rags, and the pumpkin rolled itself back into the garden. But one glass slipper remained, a tangible reminder of the most magical night of her life. The next day, the palace announced that the prince would marry the woman whose foot fit the mysterious glass slipper. Messengers traveled across the kingdom, carrying the shoe to every household. When they arrived at Lady Tremain's door, Anastasia and Drizella pushed forward eagerly, but the slipper was far too delicate for their feet. Lady Tremain's sharp eyes narrowed as she noticed Cinderella watching from the shadows. "You," she hissed, her voice like venom. "You'll ruin everything." That night, while Cinderella slept, Lady Tremain crept into her attic and stole the remaining slipper. The next morning, she locked Cinderella in the attic and hid the key. "Stay there," she said coldly. "You'll thank me later." But Cinderella was not alone. Her animal friends, who had been her companions during her years of servitude, rallied to her aid. The mice squeezed through a crack in the door and retrieved the key, and the birds brought it to Cinderella's hand. She unlocked the door and raced downstairs just as the messengers were preparing to leave. "Wait," she called, holding out the glass slipper. Lady Tremain and her daughters protested, but the messengers insisted she try it on. The slipper fit perfectly, and Cinderella reached into her pocket to reveal its matching pair. That evening, Cinderella returned to the palace, her heart pounding with a mixture of joy and disbelief. The prince greeted her with open arms, his smile as radiant as the sunrise. "I knew it was you," he said softly. Their wedding was a celebration like no other, and Cinderella, once a servant covered in ashes, became a beloved princess. But she never forgot her mother's words, to be kind and brave. She ruled alongside the prince with compassion, ensuring that no one in her kingdom would ever endure the hardships she had faced. And so Cinderella's story became legend, a testament to the power of resilience, kindness, and a little bit of magic. The end.